Shana Tova. This is the fourth of our 6 videos exploring some themes from Unetana Tokef between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and really kind of underscoring the work that Unetana Tokef invites us to do so that we can take control of our own fate and take control of our destiny and really set our intention for the year to come, shaped by experiences of Teshuvah, of returning to ourself, of tefillah, prayers, and tzedakah, charity. And this is the second video in which I'm going to be focusing on tefillah. And I want to start actually, because this is the season of Al-Chait, with my own admission, which is that I'm not all that great at prayer. And there certainly are times when I feel really connected to prayer and I feel inspired by it and grounded by it and rooted in it. And my soul is moved and feel like a different person by the time it's over. And then there are times when I just don't feel it. There are times when I put on my tallit or my tefillin and open up the siddur and it's like I'm reading Greek, right? I don't connect to the liturgy. I don't connect to the experience, and I still get through it, but certainly not with the kind of kavanah, the kind of intention that I would hope to have, that I aspire to have when I pray. And I think one of the challenges, and this has been a lifelong challenge for me, is this idea that prayer is kind of a one-way street, that we're sort of sending up the prayers, the blessings, the beseechings, the gratitude, the hopes, the dreams. We're sending them up to God, who's sitting on high, hopefully on the throne of mercy, not the throne of judgment. And, maybe God hears them, maybe God doesn't, maybe God responds, maybe God won't. And it is, for me, kind of this challenging dynamic. But I want to share with you actually a midrash that has been really helpful for me, a different way of thinking about God and that relationship to prayer. And that's a midrash from Talmud Brachot, from the Babylonian Talmud. Brachot, blessings, is the name of the tractate, and we're on page 7a, and it teaches this. And I think there are, by the way, 2 important takeaways for us, especially around the time of the Chagim, the high holidays. Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Yossi ben Zimra, from where do we learn that God prays? So immediately you're kind of introduced to this radical notion that we're not the only ones praying here. And actually God is also involved in prayer. So how do we know? Rabbi Yochanan then brings a quote from Isaiah, because it says in Isaiah, I will bring them to my holy mountain. This is a quote from God. And I will gladden them in the house of my prayers. It doesn't say their prayers. It says my prayers. So from here we learn that God prays. Now the midrash continues. However, what does God pray for? Right? Parenthetically, we're taught to believe that God is omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent, and omnipotent, right? The 4 omnis. Like, in other words, God can do everything, know everything, be everywhere. And so if that's the case, then, and of course is all loving, but if that's the case, why would God even need to pray for anything? God can just bring it about. So now back to the text. Mar Zutra ben Tuvia and Rav said, God prays as follows. It should be my will before me, that my mercy extinguishes my anger, and that my mercy overcomes my other traits, and that I behave mercifully with my children, and that I judge them favorably over and above the law. So now the first thing that we learn here is this: God's own prayer is about beseeching God's self, begging God's self to be more merciful, more forgiving, more understanding, and more loving. So don't you think that we could take a page from God's prayer book and strive to do the very same? Don't you think that we should be praying to our own selves, that we allow our traits of mercy and love and kindness and understanding overwhelm all the other traits, all the other instincts, all the other ways that we interact with the world, so that those can be our modes of connection to one another and to the divine, and to ourselves, by the way. Now the Talmud continues, it was learned that I, Rav Yishmael ben Elisha, once entered the innermost chamber, the Holy of Holies, to offer incense. And I saw God sitting on God's throne, great and high. God said to me, Yishmael, my son, bless me. And I said to God, it should be your will before you that your mercy extinguishes your anger, and that your mercy overcomes your other traits, and that you behave mercifully with your children, and that you judge them favorably over and above the law, exactly what God said in the earlier passage that God prays for. And God nodded in agreement. So this teaches us that a blessing of a typical person should not be taken lightly. So the second thing we learn here is that our prayer has power. It has power to invite God to vacate the throne of judgment and move over to the throne of mercy. And if our prayer can move God, then of course it has the power to move ourselves. Right? God is saying, bless me. And we can say the very same thing to ourselves. We can look inward and we can say, I need to bless myself. So this, of course, it serves as an invitation for each and every one of us to treat others with the same kindness and generosity of spirit that God is begging for, to understand the otherworldly power of our words, and to use our powers to bring about the very best versions of ourselves that we love most. Gmar Chatima Tova. May your seal in the book of life be for good.